Welcome to Remedy and Rhyme, where the voices of poetry and plants entwine, offering nourishment for the spirit and a gentle return to the heart of nature. I'm your host, Kimberly Kling of Joyful Roots, clinical and community herbalist. I'm so glad you've joined me here to share in the stories, reflections, and simple ways these green allies can nurture our everyday lives. This podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. I'm not a medical doctor or a licensed health professional, and nothing shared here is intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. The information provided has not been evaluated by the FDA. Herbs are powerful allies, but not without personality. If you experience an allergic reaction or discomfort from any herb mentioned, please stop using it. Also, if you're taking medications, check with your doctor about potential herb-drug interactions. Most importantly, you and you alone are the steward of your own body. What you choose to consume, apply, or integrate is entirely up to you. This is about health empowerment, listen with curiosity, and always honor your own body's wisdom. These episodes are dropped the second Wednesday of every month, and to go along with this podcast, I have a Patreon community where you can join me to explore these plants deeper. Find that at patreon.com/joyfulroots. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Remedy and Rhyme. Today we're bringing in a sweet friend, a friend who is known all around the world and is found in everything from chewing gum to tea to the ubiquitous red and white dinner mints. Can you guess who this friend is? It's Peppermint. And let's start with the poem, as we do always. This poem is called Simple Days, and it was recently published in PopTab Press's Hydration issue for the spring of 2026. Come back to me, to the place by the river, feet in the mud, heart in the birdsong. Come back to simple days, bending branches, crawdad chasing, tender feet navigating riverstone. Empty your racing mind and your heart in my waters. Your cup has been filled by enough sorrow. Let it spill over into my soft harbor. The ache of life is inescapable, but for a moment let your grief be swept away by the peace of my flowing tides. There's something that the river and Peppermint share. They both know how to meet you exactly where you are. The river doesn't ask whether you're ready to be soothed. It runs cool over your feet, murmurs past the stones, and waits. Peppermint is a lot like that too. I wrote this poem thinking about a particular kind of homecoming, not in a place necessarily, but a simpler version of ourselves, the version that could spend an entire afternoon chasing crawdads and feel completely full, the version whose mind wasn't quite so loud. It made me think about childhood too. Peppermint, I've come to believe, is an herb for exactly that kind of return. A return to simpler days, those days when we could be carefree as a child, just romping around the river, enjoying the bounty of nature, and not having so many worries on our minds constantly. That's what I was longing for when I wrote this poem. And when I think about peppermint, I think about this time where I was camped along the banks of the Verde River in northern Arizona for 3 days, and there were moments where I sat down in patches of wild mint, like right in the middle of these patches, and was completely in awe by the most vivid red and blue dragonflies flying through this mint patch and the way the sunlight wafted through the trees to create this glisten. It was just pure magic. The air smelled green and cool and sort of ancient, and the time slowed down in a way that it only does when you stop fighting it and you're just truly immersed in the natural world and present. That memory is woven into everything I want to say to you today about peppermint. It will always feel to me like a homecoming, coming home to myself as a being that is part of nature, and coming home to a place where things were just simpler and yet so vivid and peaceful. If Peppermint were a person, I think they would be the type of person that shows up at your door when things have gotten really hard for you, and they would show up with a pot of tea and the ability to be completely present, and somehow, mysteriously, this capacity to make you feel both more settled and more awake and enlivened at the same time. This is the paradox that's at Peppermint's core. Like so many plant friends that we've talked about, peppermint is another example of paradox. Peppermint is simultaneously warming and cooling, relaxing and stimulating, grounding and clarifying. They don't resolve the contradiction of these things, they hold it all at once. And there's some deep, profound medicine in that, because life rarely offers us the luxury of having just one thing at one time. Most of the time, we're asked to hold multiple things at once. Maybe the grief and the gratitude, the exhaustion and the love, the grief of what was and the hope of what might be. Peppermint is the plant that says yes and they don't ask you to choose. We can think of peppermint as a type of clarity bringer, the kind that doesn't impose, but rather the kind that drifts in cool and bright and just kind of lets things settle. The Flower Essence Society speaks to this beautifully, recommending peppermint for those people that are caught in a type of tug of war between their metabolic digestive self and their thinking creative self. Like, in other words, for those of us who live too much in our heads and have lost touch with our gut wisdom. That's the mind-gut disconnect, and so many of us can live there without even knowing it. Peppermint can help with that. I also think of peppermint as an herb of childhood recovered. There's something about mint, and when you think of mint, or you smell it, or you have mint brush up against your skin, it pulls us backward to simpler days. At least it does that for me. It makes me think of lemonade with sprigs of mint floating in it, to backyard gardens, or the feeling of being 10 years old and completely alive in my body. Peppermint carries that kind of memory and asks you to come back to it. I think the invitation is this. What are you struggling to digest? Not just in the gut, but in your life. What experience has lodged itself sideways in you, too big to swallow, too painful to metabolize? Peppermint is the gentle force that says, here, let me help you work through this. Let's go back to a simpler time. Chew on this and let things move through you. They are especially for the people who worry themselves sick, who wake up at 3 a.m. with the churn of an unfinished thought. Peppermint is for the mind that won't quiet and the belly that holds tension that the mind refuses to acknowledge. Peppermint is the cool hand on a fevered forehead. In a sense, peppermint is just like the river, a place to let your grief spill over and be swept away, a place to feel cool relief in the inescapable aches of life. Peppermint actually has their own myth, and it's one of the oldest kinds of story. It's about love and jealousy and transformation and the strange mercy of becoming something that outlasts grief. In Greek mythology, Menthe, M-I-N-T-H-E, was a river nymph, daughter of the underworld river Cocytus, and she was beloved by Hades, the god of the underworld. But Persephone wife of Hades, queen of all that is below, discovered the affair, and in her rage she transformed Mentha into a low-growing plant, trampled underfoot and forgotten. Except Hades could not undo what Persephone had done, but he could give the plant a gift. He gave her the most exquisite scent in the world, so that every time she was crushed beneath a foot or a hand, she would release it, so that she would be remembered by those who pressed her down. I find this myth almost unbearably poignant because there's something in it about the nature of resilience, that the sweetest gifts sometimes come from the most difficult pressures. The mint doesn't bloom in spite of being stepped on. She releases her medicine because of it. The crushing is part of the gift. And Mentha was a river nymph. She belonged to the water. She was made of flow and movement and the in-between places, liminal, alive, constantly running, which is perhaps why Peppermint has always felt most at home to me near moving water, why my most vivid memory of her is beside the Verde River, her leaves trailing toward the current, dragonflies overhead, and time dissolved. The river nymph became the river plant. She never really left the water, she just changed form. So now let's talk about what this shape-shifting, paradox-holding, river-born plant actually does for the body. And I promise you it is just as layered as everything else about her. Remember what I said about peppermint's dual nature? This is where it's made physical. Hot peppermint tea relaxes and dilates blood vessels, stimulating circulation, which warms the body. And then, because that warmth promotes gentle sweating, it can actually end up cooling you. Cold peppermint tea, on the other hand, cools directly without the sweating mechanism. Same plant, opposite temperatures, both useful depending on what the body needs. We can think of peppermint like a skilled river guide. They don't fight the current or force the water in one direction. They read the conditions and respond accordingly. And that's not really like indecision, it's more like a type of deep intelligence. If there's a place that peppermint really shines brightest, it's in the digestive tract. The Sanskrit root of the name mint is manth, M-A-N-T-H, and it means to stir, to agitate, or to mix. Peppermint is a mover in the gut. The menthol and volatile oils relax cramping in the intestinal muscles and ease gas, indigestion, hiccups, heartburn, IBS, and colic. Mint's tannins help tighten and tonify the gut lining, like a gentle repair for the leaky and tender, helping the intestines better absorb nutrients and rebuild their own boundaries. There's something elegant happening here from, I guess you could call it an engineering standpoint. Peppermint works on smooth muscle, the involuntary muscle tissue that lines the gut. We can't consciously tell our intestines to relax the way we might unclench a fist, let's say, but peppermint can. Peppermint speaks the language of the autonomic nervous system, that vast underground network that we don't consciously control. And they tell it to ease up and let it move. If you think about digestion, it's kind of like a process of sorting. The body decides moment by moment what is nourishing and what needs to be released, what to hold on to, and what to let pass through. That's pretty intelligent. And peppermint helps the body to do that sorting at the physical level and the energetic one. They are, in the true sense, a plant that helps you figure out what serves you and what doesn't. A lot of us probably think of peppermint as a flavoring, a breath freshener, an afterthought, but peppermint is quietly, abundantly mineral rich. They contain magnesium, calcium, potassium, phosphorus, iron, selenium, and sodium, and they offer vitamins A and C, a full suite of B vitamins including thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin, and even a small amount of protein. One of the best ways to access most of these nutrients is the simplest way, a water-based infusion, or what we would call tea. Most of the vitamins and minerals are water-soluble, which means they move readily into a warm cup, ready to be absorbed. Kind of like the river again, she carries her gifts in the water. Peppermint is also helpful for the nervous system and pain. They're analgesic, which dulls pain signals. They're antispasmodic, which releases muscular tension that the body has been clenching around, sometimes maybe for years. And when applied topically in a diluted essential oil form, peppermint is one of the most effective natural remedies for tension headaches, cooling the skin, slowing pain signals, easing that vice grip that stress wraps around the skull. And research has shown peppermint to be beneficial for things like fibromyalgia and myofascial pain, which makes intuitive sense given their affinity for tight, overworked, overactivated tissue. We can think of the pain response like a car alarm that won't shut off. Once it's triggered, it keeps signaling even when the threat has passed. I've actually experienced something like this recently, and peppermint is a kind of reset button for that system. They don't just mask the signal, they help the tissue remember that it's actually safe to let go. For the respiratory system, we can inhale peppermint. We can crush a leaf between our fingers and breathe in slowly. There's something that's almost immediate about that. The airways start to open, the sinuses start to clear. It's like a window being thrown wide open in a room that has been closed for a long time and letting fresh air in. Peppermint essential oil diffused aromatically can help to unclog congested sinuses, soothe scratchy throats, and ease the muscular tension in the nasal passages that makes allergy season feel like wearing a wet wool mask. Peppermint helps the body clear pollen, mucus, and the accumulated residue of various exposures. Peppermint moves what has stagnated. In a sense, peppermint is also moving stagnation for the mind. Pliny the Elder, the great Roman naturalist, wrote that mint stirs the mind and appetite to a greedy desire. He recommended wearing a crown of peppermint around the head to stimulate thought and enliven the soul. And while I'm not necessarily suggesting that you show up to your next meeting in a mint crown, although honestly, why not? There is real science behind this ancient observation. The aroma of peppermint has been shown to improve alertness, memory, and reaction time. It increases oxygen to the brain. It is the herbal equivalent of opening a window when you've been inside too long. Oh, I guess I already said that, but why not say it again? It's like bringing in fresh air. This is why peppermint essential oil is often called on as a study aid or a wakefulness herb or a clarity bringer. Peppermint doesn't buzz you the way caffeine does. There's no spike and crash. It just kind of illuminates, like the difference between a fluorescent bulb that's suddenly switched on and sunlight moving gradually through a window. It's the same sort of brightness, but a totally different quality. Here's something else I find entirely fascinating. Peppermint is also antioxidant rich, and emerging research has begun to explore their anti-cancer potential. Animal studies have shown that protective effects against radiation-induced damage, benzopyrene-induced lung carcinogenicity, and colon cancer cell regrowth. There are also indications of preventative effects related to tobacco-associated cancers. This research is still unfolding, but it points towards something that herbalists have intuited for centuries. This humble, abundant, really common plant is quietly doing extraordinary things at the cellular level. There's another gift that's worth mentioning, that peppermint is widely used in hair care for good reason. Peppermint stimulates circulation to the scalp, which encourages hair growth and can reduce dandruff. In a very literal sense, they bring blood and therefore life, oxygen, nutrients to the surface. They wake up sleeping follicles. Even here, they're a plant of renewal and return. I want to talk really quickly about safety around the essential oil because I think essential oil safety is important and not taken seriously enough. So we always want to dilute the essential oil if being used topically, 1 to 3 drops per teaspoon of carrier oil. And never use the raw, undiluted oil on skin, and especially not near the faces of young children, and especially not in the mouth. There are instances where we can use peppermint essential oil culinarily, but it must be diluted properly. And before doing that, we need to take the proper measures to make sure we're doing things correctly. However, most essential oils should never be ingested. Personally, I think that using the whole plant is the best way, and it's most definitely the safest. Okay, now a couple of other notes on safety. High amounts of peppermint are not really appropriate during pregnancy, and like I said, the oil should be kept away from babies and young children. Those that have GERD may find that peppermint aggravates reflux since it can relax the lower esophageal sphincter along with everything else. And nursing mothers should know that large amounts can reduce milk flow. As always, honor the dose, honor the context. A plant this generous still deserves our respect. I'd like to end this episode with a few questions of reflection. If you can, find somewhere quiet to sit, and an extra bonus if it's near water. Even a glass of peppermint tea in your hands might do. So, here are the questions I have for you. When did you last feel the ease of simple days? Truly unscheduled, unurgent time. What would it take to create even a small pocket of that in your current life? What in your life right now is hard to swallow? Is there something you have been refusing to fully digest? An experience, a grief, a truth about yourself or somebody that you love? The myth of Mentha tells us that being crushed can release something beautiful. Has there been a time in your life when pressure or difficulty brought out something in you that wouldn't have emerged otherwise? And finally, what does coming home to yourself feel like? Is there a memory, a smell, a place, a feeling that holds that sense of return for you? Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope to see you in the next episode. I am so excited to keep sharing the wisdom of plants and poetry with all of you. If you enjoy this journey and would like to help support this podcast, whether energetically, financially, or just by sharing it with a friend, I would be so grateful. Your support helps to keep this space alive, allows me to continue exploring new herbs, crafting new episodes, and sharing inspiration with you. One of the easiest ways to support this podcast is to rate and review it in your favorite podcast app. You can also join our Remedy and Rhyme Patreon page, which is available at patreon.com/joyfulroots. You'll find all sorts of goodies there, including plant stories, recipes, and more. There is a free membership, but if you are able to help support the podcast, there are some great perks with the paid memberships. And also, I have a shop on Patreon where you can easily purchase educational material like a class or a zine and further your own herbal knowledge. Another way that you can support the podcast is by getting yourself some of the most amazing matcha on the planet. It's Posana matcha. It's certified, organic, third-party tested to ensure that it's free of heavy metals, pure, safe, and absolutely delicious. This is the matcha that I always turn to because I know it's the highest quality and I just love it so much. So I'm excited that I can offer everybody that listens to this podcast 15% off. if you use the coupon code JoyfulRoots. You can find the link in the show notes or head to posana.net, that's posana.net, and use the coupon code JoyfulRoots at checkout. Although I love sharing my poetry with you, I really would love to make this a community collaborative effort. So don't be shy. Feel free to send some poetry in my way. And I'm going to keep a running list of plants that I'd like to talk about in the future. You can find that list on my website at joyfulroots.com/plantpoems. That's PLANTPOEMS. Thank you to Ikun Baradine for their music, Bedtime After a Coffee, which was in the intro and outro, and also to Lights by Sakura Girl, and Asher Fulero for Exploring the Crystal Caves, which was the music you heard in the middle of the podcast. And thank you so much to the plants #1, the greatest of all herbal teachers, to all of the herbalists that I've learned from, there's just too many to name, and for all of my family and friends for supporting me on this podcast journey. And to all of my amazing patrons and customers and clients, this really wouldn't be possible without you, so thank you again.